Once again, I am Jesse Kane. We are wrapping up Steelhead Week here, and I am with Professor Loffink. And he is known around these parts as the standard when it comes to understanding river conditions and when we should actually be getting out and going fishing. So Tim and I have got you geared up. We've actually gone out and practiced this sort of thing, but the river was blown out. And so we want to figure out what blowout even means. What does the river being blown out mean? What conditions do we want to target? People keep saying, oh, the river was too cold, that's why we didn't catch anything. So, Kenny, what are we looking at before we go out? How do we understand river conditions?
Oh, man, so many things. That's high praise, by the way, but I appreciate it. So, yeah, steelhead fishing, let's just start with just basic fish behavior. So all those things that you just mentioned, like water temperature, flow, they play a role in how the fish is going to act. So fish are cold-blooded, so it's they rely on their environment to provide them heat. So and just like any other fish, there's a certain temperature range which they're going to be the most active in. So when it's really cold, or we've got prolonged periods of cold weather, river's cold, fish are going to be lethargic, and they're going to be conserving energy and hanging out, behind rocks and in deep, dark places and not moving a whole lot. Similarly, if it's too warm, they're going to be doing the same sort of things. There's a sweet spot right in the middle. For winter steelhead, I like to say, if it's 40 degrees or above, water temperature, fish on.
Okay.
Not that you can't catch. I've caught fish between ice flows in eastern Oregon at 32.1 degrees water conditions. So you can fish at any water temperature. But when you hear people talk about temperature, it's just like what the ambient temperature is. What's the your highest probability? If you hit that sweet spot where you got 40-degree water temperature, flows
Sure.
are just perfect. I mean, those are the stuff that people go gaga over. But and it depends on the river system. Cold in one system is not as cold as another. But yeah, so I don't want to get into necessarily the specifics of what's the temperature to aim at, but it's just like the temperature outside. If it's right now, we've had a couple weeks of pretty warm weather. You can be pretty sure that the water temperatures over on the coast or coastal rivers or just wherever you're at are similar. It's going to be if it's been average temperatures, it's going to be average temperature in the river, and if it's been a cold snap, it's going to be cold, and so the fish are going to act accordingly to those environments. And the second part of that is the flow, and that's probably the most important one when it comes to actually deciding if you want to go and fish is the flow. So fish tend to move on high flows. So so that's step one. You get a big freshet. I could bring a bunch of fresh fish into the river system you want to go fishing. You can get ones that have been hanging out in deep dark holes for a long time. You can get them moving again. But you can only fish up to a certain point, right? So the term blowout means the water's so blown out that you can't even fish it. It's moving too fast, and it's really what it comes down to it more than anything is water clarity. So hear the term, chocolate milk, pudding, all that good stuff. So when you get these high flows, these big rainstorm events, the river, you get runoff, you get mud, you get all that good stuff that gets in the river, and it blows out and it gets muddy and dark, and fish are going to hunker down and not move in those scenarios either. They're just going to be dodging sticks as they go floating by, and it's going to be tough to fish. So when to determine, after a rainstorm, you always hear folks talk about, right after a freshet, it's a great time to fish because the water levels are coming down from a period when maybe it brought fresh fish in, fish hunkered down, now it's coming down and it's going to be prime time. So how do we determine what that is? And like I said, how do you determine, hey, you got some free time, you want to go fishing? Or what are the rivers doing? What's going on? So there's a couple tools that I have.
Can we recap that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So just to bring it all back around, Kenny, that's a ton of information.
Yep, sorry.
All good information, but a ton of information. It seemed like the most important things are temperature and flow. Temperature is not going to necessarily veer us off or on, but you said around 40 degrees is probably that good level to target on most rivers around here.
So that's just me too. It's just in general. Everyone's kind of got their sweet spots. I don't want to get hung up on the actual temperature too much, but just over my years of experience of fishing, I tend to think if the water's in that 40 to 45 degree range in your winter steelhead fishing, and fish are probably not
fish on, you said, right?
Yeah,
and that's good. And for me coming out, I can't nerd out on that stuff. If I see 40 to 45 degrees and I have an afternoon, hey, I might go target this.
Sure.
So we got temperature and then flow.
Temperature and flow.
And you're talking about like a blowout is after these huge rainstorms, or even a rainstorm that's large enough to really darken or muddy up that river, and it's just moving fast, and it doesn't have any sort of reflection of what it normally looks like.
Correct. Yeah.
It's blown out.
It's blown out.
But then after that, as it starts to come down, you said that's when we want to target fishing.
That can be a really good time. Yeah. So on the flip side, so I'll answer the antithesis of that is when we have long dry periods, you can have the river can be really low and clear, and so you can always, I mean, let's just put it this way: you can always go out fishing. You can fish when it's blown out. You can fish when it's low and clear. It's just your chances are going to be it's going to be tougher, tougher conditions. When it's super low and clear, let's say we've had a drought. It's been 2 weeks in the winter with no rain.
Mm-hmm.
The rivers are going to act accordingly. They're going to drop. They're going to clear up. And in those conditions, fish are really skittish. Again, they're going to go into those deep, dark holes and just hang out.
Yeah.
So you end up having the sweet spot right in the middle. And you said it earlier.
So right in between shallow and high flow.
Between shallow, and I call it. Let's just call it normal. When rivers are in kind of their normal, median flow range, that's really where you want to target it. And there's, you can fish it when it's a little high. You can fish it when it's a little low. And there's advantages and disadvantages to each one of those, and you can adjust your tactics accordingly. But essentially, there's a sweet spot in the middle when it's
no, I mean, you used the perfect word there, which is normal, right? And so right now, you're going to show us some resources that we can go to, educate ourselves on our home river. You're going to use a couple examples here that you're familiar with, but to help us find that normal for our home river.
Yeah. So the first website that I want to show is the USGS. That's United States Geological Survey Water Watch. So to get there, so I can go back, and for this I just googled USGS water data Oregon. So I use this a lot, or I used to use this all the time just for work purposes. I mean, it's a great tool. You click on USGS current water data for Oregon, click on that.
And that's the first search result, right?
That's the first search result, and then you'll get all this stuff, but what you get is a map here. You click on that map, and it just shows you an overview of the entire state of Oregon. Each one of these dots is a stream gauge. So a stream gauge is something that measures flow. So this is the current conditions across the state. And there's some color coding in there, so you can go down here. So if you see reds on the screen, like down here, that means low water. You see orange, it means low. You see green is normal. Green is normal. So if you see stuff in the green, that's, it's what we call between the 25 to 75% exceedance flows. So roughly in that normal range. And I could talk about exceedance flows.
And when you say normal, that's normal for us to fish, like we talked about. That's a good fishing level, is what's in that lime green?
Maybe. So I can get in that. It just means it's middle. It's not. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but this is just a pure snapshot. If you look at the map and you see dark reds, it means it's low. You get over here into blues, and it's going to be high. So as you can see, you go up here to northwest Oregon. We've had a lot of rain lately, so you see a lot of blues and dark blues. So that means flows are on the high side. Yeah. So, and let me get into there a little bit more and why. Let's not get too hung up on the colors. This is just in general. But let's just click on. Let's see if that works. So here, this is the Siuslaw down near Florence. So we can click on it. There's the hydrograph. Let's bring that up, and this will tell us some better stuff of what we're looking at. So there's a lot of good stuff in here, but I love to just look at this and so here's what the flow's been doing. So the date range is down here. These little triangles here, that is the median daily flow. So median, not average. Median meaning it's the middle. So you've got, I don't know how many years of data is on this for this site, but let's just say we have 25 years of data here. We have 25 years of data for January 8th, and throughout that data set, the very middle number is represented by that triangle there. So it's a really good indicator of what kind of the most normal flow condition is. It's the very middle. So when I look at this stuff, this is always the target. So I know just about without fail if a river system is plus or minus a foot or so, and I'll get into this. So you go down here, this is the actual gauge, which is measured by feet. This is measured by cubic feet per second. It's the same data, it's a different way of showing it. Actually, this one, it's high enough that it doesn't show the average, but let's just say we're within, a couple percentage points of this median flow, water's going to be pretty good, barring that there's not like a weird landslide thing or something going on like that, or glacial rivers can be tough too. Each river is different. Now, it's not to say that this flow is unfishable. I'm not that familiar with the Sayus law. I'm going to go ahead and guess based on how far above median is that the Sayus law is pretty high, might not be fishable unless you're down low and maybe doing some plunking. We can dig into the numbers a little bit more as well. And okay, so here, yeah, you can see the most recent instantaneous flow is 6,050 CFS. The median flow is 2,200. So it's, 3 times what kind of the most expected flow is. You can see the average flow is higher, and I can get into why that is, but essentially when you have these really high flow events, it's going to skew your average up. But you're kind of looking for the median to mean flow ranges. If you see that, it's going to be the river's probably going to be in pretty good shape to fish.
So Kenny, just to sum this up here, okay, so we're on the USGS site. We're looking at the hydrograph, yeah?
Yep.
Okay, so we find this hydrograph. You said our triangles are our median flow. So that's like about the target that we want to get after.
Yep.
And a foot above it and a foot below it is going to be something good for us to target if we're going out to fish for our first time.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. And again, each system is different, precipitation. So each one has some different stats. You can see here, this is an interesting one on the Wilson River. They've already had 6 inches of rain this year at the rain gauge. But so this is the Wilson River. So each one has a little bit different. I think we're high enough. The river's high enough that we're off the charts for where the median flow is. And I know just because I fished the Wilson a lot, just like everyone else, that the median flow is actually down around 5 feet. Here we're up at like 12, 13 feet. So river's
so
high.
that's our variable there. It's pretty simple to me. Okay,
right.
So it's gauge height. We're at 14 feet there on January 1st.
Yep.
But the normal is 5 feet. So would you even go and fish when it's that much higher?
I would not be fishing the Wilson under these flow conditions. So here's the Rogue River as another example. And again, so this one shows again this is your average flow. And the Rogue's a tough one because it's such a big river. The range of flows you could fish it are going to be probably a little expanded over like say some of your smaller coastal streams. But that gives you another example of like, okay, if you get pretty close to this triangle, it's going to be the fishing's going to come into shape. Up here you're probably too high as it's coming down. After a couple of days after a blowout, it might start clearing up and being good, but then we've had some more rain. I'd say right now, based on that, without knowing the Rogue very well, that's a caveat. I don't know the Rogue very well. It's probably questionable conditions right now. So that's the main one I use. I love to just get on this site. If I want to go fishing and I say, hey, I got some time, let's go over to the coast. Let's check out the Trass, see what it's doing. Click on the hydrograph. Look at the Trass, and real quick, there's even temperature data on this one. It's really good stuff. I can look and say, hey, okay, so January 3rd, we had a ton of rain. It spiked up here. It didn't flood, but it pretty well blew out. It's not going to be fishing very well. Here we had a little more rain. It might start being fishing shape down closer to here, but it's still pretty darn high. And again, when we look at this, our median flow is 1570, and we're not quite double that. I mean, it's still going to be fairly out of shape. So I look at this stuff and it gives me a pretty good idea of like what it's going to be fishing. If this comes down, another 1,000 CFS or so, gets to that closer to that median range, it's going to be fish on and game time. Here's the Clackamas at Estacada. So Clackamas River, popular river here. Again, similar stuff. There's the temperature data. There's precipitation data, and then here's what I'm looking for. You can see what the flows are doing. So again, down here, first of the year, if you went out New Year's Day, fishing conditions were probably pretty good. Even January 2nd, probably pretty good, and then all the rain hit, and you get up here, and we're up over 10,000 CFS, probably up in the 15,000 CFS range, and it's just been high ever since. And again, it's not that challenging. You can look outside and know that it's been pretty darn wet the last week. It's starting to dry off a little bit, and so now you're seeing the water drop back down, but we've had so much rain that it's high, and it's probably not quite into shape yet. So that's what I'm looking for. Is that's why I use that median flow. Just a good rule of thumb. If you're close to that median flow, it's probably going to be fishable. But again, each river is different, and so the key is get out there, experience a river, and then use this data. So I like doing that. I go to the river and I'm like, okay, and I know I've been on the river enough times to know that, like on the Wilson, when the river's running 5.5 feet, it's about 1,000 CFS. Fishing's really, it's great flows. And then just over time, like if I've gone when it's 6-7 feet, a lot of the holes are washed out. You can still fish it, but it's moving faster, and just you kind of dial in from it, just experience what works for you and what doesn't, and then you realize, and then you find that sweet spot of what's fishable and what's not. And it really comes down to clarity. Water clarity. Yeah, for me, the blowout, like you can fish really high flows, but if it's just a mud bog, fish can't see, it's going to be really challenging. If there's some plunkers out there, the plunkers, that's the one thing you can do at really high flows when those fish are moving. They sit on the bank, throw out the bait with a big weight really close to the bank where those fish are going to be moving, and you can fish some of those higher flows. But all other methods are pretty much reliant on having roughly average flows, to fish. Yeah, and that's where you talk about like steelhead green is
a lot,
and that's that sweet color that comes off of, it's no longer muddy, but it's not crystal clear. So it's the in between. So crystal clear, like I said, they're really spooky. They hang out deep down in holes. They're not going to be too active.
So steelhead green has nothing to do with steelhead. It has to do with the water.
It has to do with the watercolor. Yeah. So steelhead green is that watercolor that it's right. It's in between clear and it's not clear, and it's not murky. So it's that in between. You have a good 4 or 5 feet of visibility, but it's dark enough that the sun's not scaring them off, and if you're walking by the bank, they're not going to see you, and they're not going to fly off. They might be more prone to check out your bait, that sort of thing. That's kind of that sweet spot. And we'll look at that nice green water. That's, after a good rain event, it blows out, it gets dark and murky, it's coming back down into shape, and before it clears, it's green.
Yes.
And that's what we're looking for.
That's our steelhead green,
right.
Sweet spot.
So to forecast out, let's say I want to go fishing this weekend. I want to know what it's going to be doing Sunday. I can look at the weather, always look at the weather, and say, okay, there's going to be some rain coming in tonight, but is it going to be enough to blow it out? The caveat here is you never really know. We are predicting weather here, but this is called the Northwest, and I'll just go back here, Northwest River Prediction Center. So just Google that, Northwest River Prediction Center. I guess it's actually Northwest River Forecast Center is actually the name of it. You click on that and it just comes up a big map of the Northwest, and all these different gauges represent a different river system. And we won't talk about the color scheme here. It's all about flood, if it's flooding or not. But let's do the same thing. Let's click on the Trask River. There it is. So you can see the same sort of hydrograph that we saw before. So here's our current flow. We're about 10 feet, so the Trask is actually coming into shape pretty good. And then you can see what it's going to do over the weekend. So it's supposed to continue to drop, a little bump maybe early next week, and then continue dropping. So I look at this stuff, and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, the Trask is going to be looking pretty good here in the next couple of days. And I can reference back, because this doesn't have all the flow data that the USGS site does.
So since we've already found our median, we might know that it's at 6 feet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just go back to the Trask again, go back to your hydrograph. So yeah, I don't know why the median isn't showing up here. Maybe I don't have it clicked, but anyway. So yeah, our average is right here about 1200 CFS. Yeah, 1500 CFS is the median. We're above that, but we're coming down into range. You click back over to the prediction site and you're saying, okay, we're coming down into range now, and it's going to continue to drop. Man, this Monday is looking pretty good. And it's not going to be too cold. I mean, that would be, man, I need to go fishing. I haven't looked at the flows, but that's looking pretty good to me to go to hit maybe the Trask River on Sunday, Monday, and go try to catch some fish. So So yeah, that's how I use that. And then, but above all, these are tools you can use, but it's getting out. And this means nothing if you've never been to the river and know that at 10 feet what it looks like. I know at 10 feet it's going to be moving. It's going to be pretty high, but as it comes down closer to that 9 feet, it's going to start looking really good. And be looking really fishy. So it's all about getting out. And like I said, it all depends on the river system. There's some river systems where, hey, the lower the better, especially if you're a glacial system. You get it really low and get some of that glacial till to freeze up and not be coming downstream. It can be really good. I do a yearly trip up in the Olympic Peninsula up in Washington, and yeah, there's each river is unique. Some fish really good when it's super low, some fish better when it's high. And then there's little tricks in there between that too, like a lot of people, like I said, fish move when the water's up. So a good trick can be like, okay, if it's predicted to rain here, a little bump in flow can be a really good thing too. Fish might start moving a little bit during the day. Bottom line is, I love geeking out on this stuff just because I'm a nerd, but you could catch fish when it's here, you could catch fish when it's here. It just, it's just little things here and there you pick up over time. It's all about getting out there. The biggest thing is, do I even waste my time or not? Yeah. And this is where I start. I'm like, someone asked me to go fishing over the weekend. I go here, I check out what the flow is, what it's been doing, what it's forecasted to be. I'm like, all right, it might be pretty good, it might be fishable. If it's going to be way up here, I know this stuff's not fishable. It's going to be a mud bath. It's going to be a mud bog. So don't waste your time. But as it starts coming back into shape, go check it out, and you might find something you really like. And there's some other tools as well, like there's Steelhead Stalkers. It basically has a bunch of good stuff on their website, but has the river levels. You click on that, and it's the same sort of thing, but it really breaks it down by the coast. Let's say you want to check out the LC. It's the same sort of graph. It shows you, okay, it was way up here on January 3rd, up here at 13 feet, and now it's coming down to 7.76, about 4,700 CFS. What it doesn't tell you is kind of what that, how that compares to the average flows. But usually, after, if you look at a hydrograph, if there's a peak and it's a couple days after the peak and it's quite a bit lower, chances are it's going to be fishable. This is still going to be pretty high, but it's probably, the clarity's probably decent enough to at least wet a line. So yeah, there's just different tools. They give you different information. I use them all. Use what's at your disposal. There's a lot of good stuff on the internet that you can nerd out on, so check it out.